We got a massive New York Met trade update. The trade deadline plan has been revealed as the front office made a surprising comment about their approach to the trade deadline that partially froze Met action for 2 days. And fans were super surprised about this because the Mets are supposed to be a big buyer at the trade deadline. So we're going to go over this comment in detail and all of its ramifications only here on Mets Digest. I'm your host today, Mike Duda. We're going to talk this interesting comment from the front office, but first we got to talk about some subscribers, and that being that 68.9% of you that watch these videos aren't one. So please do me a favor, just a favor here at Mets Digest, and hit that free subscribe button. That way we can bring content to you about the amazing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in, and we are going to start with the comment itself. It's from Mike Puma of the New York Post, a trustworthy insider who commented this on Saturday morning early at 10:47 a.m. as you can see on the bottom left hand corner of your screen. He posted this on X saying, quote, "With several teams on the bubble as buyers slash sellers, Mets officials view this weekend as a decision point for many." This weekend, of course, being yesterday and Sunday and Saturday. And that decision point is mainly for other teams, not the Mets. It's teams that might be sellers, might be buyers that are trying to make decisions. Team Brass plans to ramp up the process beginning Sunday night, last night, when more specific trade targets and scenarios will start being discussed among club officials. Now, I understand why the Mets front office did this. At the time of Saturday, maybe 6 or 7, possibly 8 teams were confirmed sellers. It was really only one team per division, maybe 2, like in the National League East, where it was basically the Braves and the Nationals that were confirmed. But even the Braves weren't 100% confirmed sellers until they just got recent news that all of their opening day starters are now on the injured list, so they're probably going to be sellers now. And that's exactly what the Met front office was looking for. They were looking for teams that were going to possibly, maybe in some way be buyers, and then something happens, they lose a couple of games, they're on a losing streak, like the Braves, a couple injuries happen, and now they are confirmed sellers. Then the Mets go and talk to them. Now, I understand that point, especially because as of Saturday, so many teams were in the race. So many teams still are in the race because 12 teams make the playoffs in total, and you're going to, of course, have teams that are just a couple of games out at the end of the season. But although I understand all of that, I don't understand why the Mets didn't talk to the confirmed sellers. As of Saturday, the A's, the Pirates, the Orioles, teams like that were confirmed sellers. They were going nowhere. They were 100% going to trade away some players and probably want prospects in return. So I don't understand why Stearns and the front office didn't at that point go and approach those teams. That's the only problem that I have with this decision from the front office. But it's now Monday. As of the time that I'm filming, it's now 12:30 in the afternoon. Stearns, the Met front office, they got to get moving. They have to start now, because we are just 3 days and a little over 3 hours from that July 31st, Thursday, 4 p.m. trade deadline. So Stearns in the front office has to get moving. But with that, let's turn to a CBS article posted earlier this morning titled MLB Trade Deadline. Who's a buyer? Who's a seller, and who's still on the bubble on July 31st. It is by Mike Axia, who goes on to talk about the Mets, saying, quote, "Every contender wants bullpen help, and that includes the Mets, who traded for lefty Gregory Soto over the weekend. Bullpen help and a center fielder are the top priority for a New York team that has been unable to create separation atop the NL East. Currently 1.5 games up on the Philadelphia Phillies. Great sweep. Adam's going to cover that." Now, the Mets were one of 13 teams that he said were, quote, obvious buyers. That includes the Mets, the Red Sox, the Cubs, the Tigers, the Astros, the Dodgers, the Brewers, the Yankees, the Phillies, the Padres, the Mariners, the Rangers, the Blue Jays, and of course, like I said, the Mets. Now, as you can see on your screen, there's 30 teams in Major League Baseball, as you probably know. So what about the remaining 17 teams? Well, he has 2 that are listed as, quote, probable buyers, that being the Reds and the Giants, but still, half the league is out. That's going to be 4 of them being somewhere in the middle, and I put that in quotes, including the Guardians, the Royals, the Cardinals, and the Rays. Now, with that, the remaining 11 teams were considered, quote, obvious sellers. The Diamondbacks, the Braves, the Orioles, the White Sox, the Rockies, the Angels, the Marlins, the Twins, the Pirates, the A's, and the Nationals. Now, although that's what this particular author said, this is very much so up for debate, especially given recent streaks and storylines. So what I'm going to do for the rest of this video is go into every single division, and we're going to see, is what this author's saying actually true, or is there something else to talk about? Well, we'll start with our division, the National League East. Of course, the Mets and Phillies are buyers. They're 1.5 games away from each other. Phillies are currently up in the wild card as well, so there's no way either of those teams are going to sell. The Braves, with the recent news, are definitely going to be sellers. Every single one of their starting pitchers on the opening day roster is now injured, so that is definitely not going to be a team pursuing buying. They're going to look to get rid of some pieces, bring in some prospects, build for next year. Same thing with the Nationals. They just have fallen out of it. They're also a young team, so they're going to be looking to get rid of some veteran pieces. Now, CBS Sports had the Marlins as sellers, confirmed sellers, obvious sellers. I put that in quotes, but I disagree. They're only 4 games under 500 at this moment, only 6 games back in the wild card. Yes, they're chasing 4 teams, but they are 7-3, as you see on your screen, in the last 10 games, and 20-9 in their last 29 games. I think if they continue this hot streak, they very well can make a push for that 3rd National League wildcard spot. So I wouldn't confirm them to be sellers yet, which again goes to the point. Why were you waiting? If you go call someone and you say, hey, I want XYZ player from your team, and they go, hey, I think we're actually going to buy at the deadline. I don't know where we're at right now. We might be in the middle. Fine. At least you made the phone call. That's why I was saying, do something on Saturday and Sunday. You're only 5 days away from the trade deadline, and so far the only move that the Mets have made is going out and getting Gregory Soto on Friday from the Baltimore Orioles. So go ask people, why not? It's worth a phone call. Plus, you have some teams that are most certainly going to be sellers. I think of the Rockies, I think of the White Sox, the Pirates, the A's, the list goes on and on. So with that, let's turn it to the National League Central. Of course, the Pirates are at the bottom of the division there, 100% sellers. The Cubs and the Brewers are 2 of the best teams in ball. The Brewers have been red hot of late, so both of them are obviously going to be buyers. Now, the CBS Sports article had the Reds as, quote, probable buyers, and that's because they are still 6 games above 500. They're only 1 game out of the wild card, so I think they're definitely going to be buyers at the deadline. It's just not as obvious as other teams, but the real interesting team in this particular division is the Cardinals. Now, they are more realistically in the race than the Marlins, but as you see on your screen, they're 3-7 in their last 10 and 7-15 in their last 22. Now, I talk about this because also, if you watched the game last night, the Met game last night, they were on Sunday Night Baseball, and this was actually a segment that the 3 broadcasters ended up talking about. They were speaking with Buster Olney as well, who is part of the broadcast crew, about this, saying, hey, who's going to be a buyer? Who's going to be a seller? Why not talk about this? So I think now is an absolutely great time to speak of it. On the broadcast, they said that the Cardinals are going to be sellers, and I happen to agree. They're down to just 1 game above 500, and they are still 3.5 out in the wild card. So I don't think they're going to be buyers. I think they're going to end up being sellers, but that is also not confirmed right now. Let's head it over to the National League West, where obviously the Dodgers are great. They are going to be buyers. The Padres are also going to be buyers. The Rockies are one of the worst teams, probably the worst team in baseball. They are definitely going to be sellers, but there are 2 interesting teams to talk about. Now, the Giants were also considered probably buyers, but they've been cold of late. They got swept by us. Let's go Mets, baby. But they probably still will be buying because they bought early in getting Rafael Devers. So I think their general manager, or rather president of baseball operations in Buster Posey, is going to be aggressive at the trade deadline. They are only chasing Cincinnati in that wild card race. Now we'll go below that to the Diamondbacks. The Arizona Diamondbacks are 4 under 500 right now, and they're in the same spot as the Miami Marlins in terms of the wild card race, 6 games out of that 3rd spot. But unlike Miami, in their last 27, they are 10-17, way worse than how the Marlins have been playing of late. So keep that in mind. I personally think the Arizona Diamondbacks will be sellers, but unlike the CBS Sports article said, I don't think they're obvious sellers. I don't think that. Now let's turn it over to the American League, starting with the AL East. Toronto is one of the hottest teams in baseball. Obviously going to be buyers. The Yankees have had some controversy around them with the Aaron Judge injury. He'll be out for 10 days, then they plan to DH him for the next 10, and then he'll finally return to the field. So that's about 3 weeks of not having a full Aaron Judge, but it's still the Yankees. I don't think the Yankees have ever been a seller at the deadline, so they are definitely going to be buyers as well. The Orioles are clear sellers, and the Red Sox are also clear buyers, being red hot of late. Orioles are also one of the worst teams in baseball. They already have sold. They gave the Mets Gregory Soto. They made a deal with the Mets. So let's talk about the Tampa Bay Rays. They were another team that were in the middle. So recently, they have lost series to both the Orioles, including a game where they gave up 22 runs to Baltimore, and they lost the series to the White Sox. As you see on your screen, 4-game losing streak, 3-7 in the last 10, and 6-17 in their last 23 games. But they are just the first team out of the wild card, 3 games back of the Texas Rangers. So it'll be interesting to see where the Rays go from here. Yandy Diaz and now Brandon Lowe have been big names talked about possibly being moved out of Tampa. We'll talk about Brandon Lowe in a later video. Now, we'll move it over to the American League Central, where although a super cold streak has happened over there in Detroit, the Tigers are easily buyers. They're one of the best teams in ball. The White Sox are one of the worst teams in ball, so they are obvious sellers. But there's a couple more teams to talk about. Although the Twins were considered definite sellers, I don't think it's definite. I think it's pretty obvious that they will be sellers, but I wouldn't say it's definite. It would not surprise me if the Twins end up going and buying because they're only 5 games under 500. And given how many teams make the playoffs, like I was saying earlier, there's always a chance for every team. But the Central is one of the more interesting divisions. They have plenty of bullpen help. There's plenty of things that the American League Central has to offer for the other divisions, but they have so many teams that are just kind of in the middle, like the Twins, like the Kansas City Royals. Now, you would think 2 games under 500, 4 back in the wild card, 8.5 back in the division. They're definite sellers, right? No, they're actually in the middle, like we heard from that article, because of last night's move. We learned more about this team being buyers. They are probably leaning towards being buyers at the trade deadline after extending Seth Lugo. Seth Lugo, his contract was up at the end of the year. He was a big name, rumored to be going elsewhere. I thought there was a chance he'd be returning to Flushing, but he signed an extension with Kansas City and will be remaining a Royal. They are also 6-4 in their last 10 and 12-7 in their last 19, trailing just 2 teams in the wild card race. So it looks like the Royals are going to end up being buyers, or possibly soft buyers like the article mentioned. Last team to go over here in the Central is the Cleveland Guardians. They had a 10-game losing streak. Then they went 6-4 in their last 10 and 12-5 in their last 17, only chasing the Rays over in that American League wildcard. So it looks like they will also be buyers, although they are still under 500. And if they're sellers, please, please, please give us Steven Kwan. I would love Steven Kwan. Cheap. He'll be done at the end of the year. His contract comes up, and he would be the perfect leadoff hitter here in Flushing. I've mentioned that time and time again. But with that, let's turn to our last division here. It is the American League West. Astros are obviously buyers. Mariners are buyers. Texas Rangers have been super hot of lately. They are in the wild card spot right now, that third wild card spot, tied with the M's. So obviously, they're going to be buyers. The A's are clear sellers, one of the worst teams in baseball. And it looks like the Angels are going to be sellers as well, because they are 51-55. Now, keep in mind, they were 49-50 before they got swept by us Metsies, baby. 7 in a row. So that is good news for the Mets, but it looks like the Angels are also going to be sellers. So that is where every single team stands as of now, in both my opinion and the experts' opinions. And we'll see what David Stearns and the front office ends up doing. They didn't do anything Saturday and Sunday. That's what this tweet was. That's what this video is about. But now it's time for them to start doing something. It's now Monday. The weekend is over. Go get players. Help out that bullpen, David. Let's get it started. So let me know what you think down there in the comment section. Do you agree that some of these teams are definite sellers, some of them definite buyers? Do you disagree with any of the teams that I mentioned? What are your thoughts on the Mets front office plans and why they didn't do anything the past 2 days and their reasoning for it? Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. Give me all your thoughts down below in the comment section. Unfortunately, that's all the time I have for you in today's video. Thank you so much as always for watching, and let's go Mets.